The man's body was dead weight in Jack's arms. Water streamed from the stranger's clothes as Jack hauled him over the side of the fishing boat, his muscles burning with the effort. The stranger wasn't breathing. His lips were blue, his skin pale as the morning mist hanging over the river. Jack pressed his ear to the man's chest, hearing nothing but the gentle lapping of water against the hull. That's when he noticed it, a strange insignia on the man's waterlogged jacket, unlike any military patch he'd seen before. Jack had no idea that pulling this drowning stranger from the river would change everything, or that in just 3 days, he'd be staring into the dark barrel of a gun as a submarine silently broke the surface beside his small fishing boat. Before we dive into this story, I'm curious, where are you watching from right now? And what time is it there? Drop it in the comments below. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe so you never miss our next shocking story. Jack Reeves woke before sunrise, same as he had for the past 8 years. His back ached from sleeping in the small cabin of his fishing boat, but the river was the only home he wanted now. The cramped quarters of the Second Chance were a daily reminder of how far he'd fallen. Once a decorated Navy man, now just another weathered fisherman trying to scrape by. He started the engine, listening to its familiar sputter before it caught. That engine was like him. Old, temperamental, but still working. Barely. Coffee first, then bait, he muttered to himself. A habit from years of solitude. His hands shook slightly as he poured from the thermos. The tremors were worse in the morning, a souvenir from things he'd seen, things he'd done. The fog rolled thick across the water as he navigated through the estuary. He knew better than his own heartbeat. This river had become his refuge after everything fell apart, after Kabul, after he'd failed to save his team. Jack checked his empty traps with a sigh. Another poor catch. The restaurant in town wouldn't be happy, but they'd take whatever he brought. He needed the money too badly to skip a day. He rubbed the scar running down his forearm, a permanent reminder of his last mission. 14 years in special operations. And what did he have to show for it? A broken down boat and nightmares that still woke him screaming. Just keep moving, he told himself, pushing the boat deeper into the mist. Just keep moving. The river stretched before him, vast and indifferent. Another day of fighting the current, fighting to survive. Just like every day before it, the mist clung to the water like a shroud. When Jack first noticed the ripples, something was disturbing the river's surface 50 yards to his starboard side. Probably just a beaver or maybe a deer swimming across. But then he saw an arm break through the water, flailing desperately before disappearing again. "Hey," Jack called out, already turning the boat. "Hold on." His heart pounded as he cut the engine, letting momentum carry him toward the spot. There, a dark shape beneath the surface, sinking fast, without hesitation, Jack stripped off his jacket and dove into the freezing water. The cold hit him like a physical blow, stealing his breath. Beneath the surface, visibility was near zero. Jack's hands reached blindly until they struck fabric. He grabbed hold and kicked upward, lungs burning. They broke the surface together, the stranger limp in his arms. Getting the unconscious man into the boat was a struggle that left Jack gasping and his muscles screaming, but he managed it, hauling himself up afterward. The man wasn't breathing. Jack turned him onto his side, pounding his back until water poured from the stranger's mouth. He started CPR, counting compressions, trying to ignore the strange clothes the man wore. Not quite a wetsuit, not quite military fatigues, but something in between. "Come on," Jack muttered. "Breathe, damn you." As if obeying the command, the man suddenly convulsed, coughing violently as water spewed from his lungs. His eyes flickered open for just a moment, dark, confused, terrified, before rolling back as he slipped into unconsciousness again. Jack grabbed a blanket from his cabin and wrapped it around the stranger. Only then did he notice the blood seeping through the man's odd uniform and the strange insignia on the collar. It wasn't a standard military patch, but something Jack had never seen before. "Who the hell are you?" Jack whispered, but the only answer was the soft sound of labored breathing. The man on Jack's boat was breathing but barely. His pulse fluttered weakly under Jack's fingers like a trapped bird. The bleeding hadn't stopped. A deep gash ran along the stranger's side, partially hidden by his unusual gear. Jack cut away the fabric to expose the wound. Not a random injury. This was a knife wound, deliberate and deep. Someone had tried to kill this man. "What have you gotten yourself into, pal?" Jack muttered, applying pressure with a clean rag. The stranger's eyelids fluttered. His hand suddenly shot up, gripping Jack's wrist with surprising strength. "They're listening," he rasped, eyes wild, but focused. "Signal compromised. Trust no one. Clearwater." "Easy," Jack said, trying to calm him. "You're safe. I'm taking you to get help." "No." The man's grip tightened painfully. "No authorities. They'll find me. Find you too." A coughing fit seized him then, blood speckling his lips. His hand fell away as he slipped back into unconsciousness. But not before Jack noticed something else. A small tattoo behind his ear. Not military standard. It looked like a series of numbers and letters, almost like a service ID but in a format Jack didn't recognize. Jack gunned the engine toward shore. Whatever trouble this man was in, he needed a hospital more than he needed secrecy. As the boat cut through the water, Jack's phone buzzed. No signal out here usually, but somehow he had 5 bars. When he checked the screen, it showed an incoming call from a number with no digits, just a blank space where the number should be. Jack declined the call, unsettled. The phone immediately buzzed again. Same non-number. He turned it off and shoved it in his pocket. The shoreline was coming into view now, but something felt wrong. Through his binoculars, Jack spotted men in dark clothing watching from the tree line. Not hikers or fishermen. These men stood with military precision, speaking into radio units. Jack altered course, heading for the public dock instead of his usual mooring. Whatever was happening, his gut told him to be careful. The same instinct that had kept him alive in war zones was screaming now. As he approached the dock, his passenger stirred again. "Submarine," the man whispered. "Project Clearwater. Tell Landon." But whatever message he had died on his lips as he lost consciousness once more, leaving Jack with nothing but questions and a growing sense of dread. The hospital parking lot was nearly empty when Jack pulled in. The stranger slumped in his passenger seat. Jack had wrapped him in blankets, trying to hide the strange uniform. The bleeding had slowed, but the man's breathing was worryingly shallow. "I need help," Jack called, half carrying the man through the emergency room doors. "He nearly drowned. He's been stabbed." Nurses rushed forward with a gurney. Jack stepped back, suddenly aware of the blood covering his clothes. He gave the staff what little information he had found in the river. No ID, possible knife wound. "Sir, we need to know who he is," a doctor pressed. "I told you. I don't know. I was fishing and pulled him out of the water." While the medical team worked, Jack went to the bathroom to clean up. When he returned, 2 men in suits were waiting by the reception desk. Something about their posture made the hair on Jack's neck stand up. "Mr. Reeves?" The taller one approached. "Agent Wilson, Department of Homeland Security. This is Agent Cole. We need to ask you about the man you brought in." Jack kept his face neutral. "Not much to tell. Found him drowning. Pulled him out." "Did he say anything to you? Give you anything?" "He was mostly unconscious." Agent Cole circled behind Jack. "The hospital says you claimed he was stabbed." "Why would you think that?" "Because I saw the wound," Jack said evenly. "Looked like a knife to me." "Mr. Reeves," Wilson leaned closer. "The man you brought in is a psychiatric patient from a VA facility upriver. He attacked a nurse and escaped last night. He has delusions about government conspiracies." It was a smooth lie, but Jack had heard better. He didn't strike me as delusional. You have military experience, correct? Special operations? The question hung in the air. Jack hadn't mentioned his military background to anyone. I served. That was a long time ago. Then you understand the importance of following proper channels, Wilson said. If he said anything at all, you need to tell us. Jack shrugged. Like I said, he was barely conscious. We'll need your contact information, Cole said, in case we have follow-up questions. As Jack wrote down his details, he noticed two more suits entering, speaking with the hospital administrator. The man he'd rescued was being quietly transferred to another wing, surrounded by security. Just a psychiatric patient, huh? Jack muttered. Wilson smiled thinly. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Reeves. You can go now. Jack couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As he drove back to the marina, twice he spotted the same dark SUV in his rearview mirror. He took 3 unnecessary turns, and each time, the vehicle followed. At the marina, his boat had been moved from where he'd hastily tied it. Nothing seemed missing, but someone had definitely searched it, his sparse belongings slightly out of place. His logbook shifted on the table. Jack pulled out his old laptop and searched Project Clearwater. Nothing relevant appeared. Next, he tried to sketch the insignia he'd seen on the man's collar, a trident crossed with what looked like lightning bolts, surrounded by a hexagon. The search returned 0 results. He tried Landon Naval Intelligence and variations, but found nothing connecting the name to any current operations. His phone rang, unknown number. Jack let it go to voicemail. The message was nothing but static and what sounded like Morse code buried beneath. He played it again, trying to decipher the pattern, but it was too distorted. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Jack's mind replayed his own last mission. The extraction gone wrong. The teammates lost because intelligence had been compromised. He'd suspected someone high up had leaked information, but his accusations had been buried, and he'd been quietly discharged with a recommendation for psychological evaluation. At 3 a.m., a knock on his boat startled him awake. Hand on the knife he kept hidden under his pillow. Jack approached the cabin door. Who's there? Captain Jack Reeves? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. I'm a friend of Nathan's. Jack cracked the door. A woman in her 30s stood on the dock, her posture unmistakably military despite her civilian clothes. Nathan? Jack questioned. The man you pulled from the river. Lieutenant Commander Nathan Drake. Jack opened the door wider. How do I know you're really his friend? She held up a phone, showing a photo of herself with the man Jack had rescued, both in civilian clothes, smiling. I'm Elaine, his sister. Her voice dropped lower. And I need to know what he told you before they took him. Jack studied her face for signs of deception. Why would you think he told me anything? Because I know my brother. He wouldn't have let himself be captured without passing on critical information. Captured? Jack tensed. The agent said he was a psychiatric patient. Elaine's bitter laugh held no humor. Is that what they told you? Nathan is Navy intelligence. He was working on a classified project, submarine-based surveillance system, codenamed Clearwater. The pieces started connecting. He mentioned something about a submarine, and that name, Clearwater. Did he say anything else? Anything about why he was in the river? Jack hesitated, then decided to trust his instincts. He said the signal was compromised. Said, tell Landon. That mean anything to you? The color drained from Elaine's face. Admiral Landon is the project overseer. If Nathan was trying to get a message to him, she trailed off, looking toward the dark river. Something's gone very wrong. Those men at the hospital weren't Homeland Security, were they? Some might be. Others. She shook her head. There's a private contractor involved. Nexus Defense Systems. They'd been pushing to weaponize what was supposed to be just surveillance technology. Nathan was opposed. Jack's old suspicions flared. Private military contractors had been involved in his final mission too. Your brother's in danger, isn't he? Jack asked quietly. We both are now, Elaine said. And so are you. As if to confirm her words, headlights appeared at the marina entrance. The same black SUV Jack had noticed earlier was rolling slowly toward the docks. They followed me, Elaine whispered. I'm sorry. Jack was already moving, grabbing his go bag, always packed, old habits, and starting the boat's engine. Get in, he told her, casting off the lines. I know this river better than they do. As they pulled away from the dock, Jack spotted men running toward them. The glint of metal in their hands was unmistakable. Guns. The quiet life he'd built was unraveling rapidly, pulling him back into a world he'd tried to escape. But this time, maybe he could get it right. Maybe he could save someone who deserved saving. 3 miles downriver, Jack cut the engine and let the boat drift into a hidden inlet he'd discovered years ago. The overhanging trees provided cover from above. The shallow draft of his boat allowed them to go where larger vessels couldn't follow. They'll have helicopters soon, Elaine said, her voice tight with tension. Not in this weather. Jack gestured to the thick clouds rolling in. Storm's coming. We've got a few hours at least. Elaine paced the small deck. I need to contact someone who can help us. Someone I trust. You can trust the Admiral, right? Landon? She hesitated. That's complicated. Nathan trusted him. But what? 3 weeks ago, Nathan told me he'd discovered something about the project, a backdoor built into the system. Someone designed it to be hijacked. Jack felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. And you think Landon might be involved? I don't know who to trust anymore. She sank onto the bench, suddenly looking exhausted. Nathan was gathering evidence. That's why he was in the water. He was doing an unauthorized dive to the prototype. Jack stared out at the darkness. Getting involved was dangerous. He knew that better than most. He'd tried to expose corruption once before, and it had cost him everything. Maybe we should just go to the authorities, he suggested, without much conviction. Which authorities? FBI? CIA? Pentagon? How do we know who's compromised? She was right. In his experience, once rot set in at high levels, it was hard to know where it ended. His phone buzzed again. Sheriff Mike Donnelly, one of the few people Jack still considered a friend. Jack. Mike's voice was low and serious when he answered. What the hell have you gotten yourself into? I've got feds crawling all over, asking about you and some guy you brought to the hospital. It's complicated, Mike. Uncomplicated. These aren't regular feds, Jack. Something's off about them. They took the guy you rescued right out of the hospital without proper paperwork. Jack caught Elaine's eye. Do you know where they took him? No, but they're saying he's dangerous. Armed and delusional. They're framing it like you might be in danger, but it feels more like they're hunting both of you. After he hung up, Jack relayed the conversation to Elaine. They're trying to contain the situation, she said grimly. Nathan knows too much. And now, so do we, Jack added. At least partly. The weight of the situation pressed down on him. He'd been living a quiet life, keeping his head down, his past buried. Now he was right back in the middle of government conspiracies and deadly secrets. I don't know if I can help you, Jack admitted. Last time I tried to stand up against this kind of thing, he trailed off. The memory's too painful. What happened? I got my team killed. Got myself blacklisted. Nobody believed me when I said our mission had been compromised from within. A bitter taste filled his mouth. 8 years later, and the guilt still felt fresh. I understand if you want out, Elaine said quietly. You've already done more than most would. Jack looked at her, determined, afraid, fighting against powerful forces to save her brother. He thought about the man he'd pulled from the river, desperately trying to deliver a warning, even as he was drowning. Your brother was willing to die to expose the truth, Jack said slowly. What kind of man would I be if I just walked away now? The doubt was still there, a knot in his stomach, but alongside it was something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. We need to find out where they took Nathan, he decided, and we need more information about Project Clearwater. As the first heavy raindrops began to fall, Jack steered the boat back into the main channel. Running away had never saved anyone. Maybe this time, running toward the danger would. Jack's phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Entrance. 20 minutes. Come alone. It was signed simply, NS. Could be a trap, Elaine warned, as they sat in Jack's truck in the hospital parking lot, rain hammering the roof. Could be, Jack agreed. But Sarah was the nurse on duty when I brought your brother in. She saw something. Jack pulled his cap low and entered through the sliding doors. A petite woman in scrubs was waiting, nervously checking her watch. Mr. Reeves, she approached cautiously. I'm Nurse Sarah. Thank you for reaching out. She glanced around before speaking. They said that man was a psychiatric patient, but I've worked psych wards. The way they handled him, the questions they asked, it wasn't right. Did you hear where they were taking him? One of them mentioned a facility at Coldwater Point, military, I think. Jack knew it, an old naval station, supposedly decommissioned years ago. There's more, Sarah continued. Before they took him, he regained consciousness briefly, asked for paper. He wrote this, then made me promise to destroy it. I kept it, instead. She pressed a folded paper into Jack's palm. Be careful. These people aren't who they claim to be. Back in the truck, Jack showed Elaine the paper, a series of numbers and letters. It's coordinates, she realized. And a time. Tomorrow at 0600. Coordinates for what? I think it's where the submarine will surface. Jack's phone rang again, a number he recognized. His old Navy buddy Marcus Reed. Jack? Marcus's voice was tense. Got your message. Can't talk long. You're asking about things you shouldn't know exist. I need to know if Project Clearwater is legitimate or compromised. A long pause. Both. It started clean. Now it's not. Some people are trying to fix that. Is Admiral Landon one of those people? Yes. No. Hell, Jack, it's complicated. Landon built the project, but something changed. Listen to me. If Drake contacted you, there's a reason. Trust that. The line went dead. As night deepened, Jack and Elaine plotted their next move at a 24-hour diner miles from the marina. The coordinates Nathan had written pointed to a remote stretch of river near the bay. We'll need to be there when the submarine surfaces, Elaine said. It might be our only chance to find Nathan and expose what's happening. Whoever's after your brother controls that submarine, Jack reminded her. Why would they surface where he told us? Because Nathan wouldn't send us into a trap, Elaine insisted. He must have allies on board, someone he trusts. Jack wasn't convinced, but they were running out of options. Sometimes, the most dangerous path was the only one available. Okay, he finally agreed. We'll be there at dawn, but we go in prepared for anything. The pre-dawn darkness wrapped around them like a shroud. As Jack navigated toward the coordinates, rain had given way to heavy fog that limited visibility to mere yards ahead. Perfect cover, or perfect trap. We're almost there, Jack said, checking the GPS. Cut the flashlight. Elaine switched it off, leaving them in darkness broken only by the dim glow of instruments. Jack, she said softly. If this goes wrong, it won't, he replied, more confidently than he felt. But doubt gnawed at him. 8 years ago, he'd led men into danger based on his convictions, and they died because of it. Now he was doing it again, risking not just himself but Elaine too. He cut the engine, letting the boat drift the final distance. The water was eerily still, the silence absolute except for gentle lapping against the hull. What if we're wrong? Jack voiced the fear that had been building. What if your brother is working against the project, not trying to save it? What if we're helping the wrong side? Nathan wouldn't, Elaine began, then stopped herself. I don't know anymore, but something is wrong with Project Clearwater, and people are willing to kill to keep it secret. Jack closed his eyes, the weight of decision heavy on his shoulders. He could turn around now, go back to his solitary life on the river, let the powerful forces at play fight their own battles. Or he could finish what he started when he pulled a drowning man from the water. His watch beeped quietly. 0600 hours. Nothing happened. No submarine surfaced. No lights appeared in the fog. They're not coming, Elaine whispered, despair edging her voice. Jack stared into the mist, remembering his team's faces before that final mission, remembering how he'd known something was wrong, but followed orders anyway. No, he said firmly. I'm not walking away this time. He reached beneath his seat and pulled out a waterproof case. Inside was something he'd kept hidden for 8 years. Evidence from his last mission, proof of corruption he'd never been able to use. Whatever your brother discovered, I think it connects to what I found years ago, Jack said, opening the case. Someone's been selling American military secrets for a long time. As Jack explained, a dark shape began to materialize in the fog behind them, massive, silent, and rising from the depths. The submarine broke the surface with barely a ripple, water streaming from its black hull. It was smaller than standard naval vessels, a stealth prototype designed for shallow waters. That's it, Elaine breathed. Clear water. Before they could react, floodlights blazed from the conning tower, blinding them. Jack instinctively pushed Elaine down as a mechanical voice boomed across the water. Remain stationary. You are in a restricted area. Men in tactical gear emerged onto the submarine's deck, weapons trained on their small boat. One figure separated from the others, moving to the edge of the deck. Captain Reeves, the man called. Permission to come aboard. Jack froze. It was the voice of the man he'd pulled from the river. Lieutenant Commander Drake? Jack called back. The same. I'd like to thank the man who saved my life, if you don't mind. Warily, Jack maneuvered his boat alongside the submarine. Nathan Drake looked different now, composed, authoritative, his injuries treated but still visible in the bandages beneath his uniform. As Drake stepped onto the fishing boat, Jack saw men on the submarine training their weapons not just on him, but on Drake as well. Internal conflict. You have something I need, Drake said quietly. Evidence that can end this. Jack nodded toward his waterproof case. Is this why you arranged to be found? You knew who I was? No, Drake said with genuine surprise. Finding you was Providence. When I learned who had rescued me, a decorated officer who'd been silenced for trying to expose corruption, I knew I could trust you. Drake turned to his sister. Elaine, you shouldn't be here. Neither should you. If what you told me is true. Drake's face hardened. It is. Nexus Defense has compromised Clearwater. They've built a back door that would allow them to hijack control of any submarine equipped with the system. Sell it to the highest bidder, Jack guessed. Exactly. Admiral Landon discovered it too late. They poisoned him 3 days ago, made it look like a heart attack. Elaine gasped. Then who's giving orders? Officially, Landon's second in command. Actually, Gregory Weiss, Nexus CEO. He has half the brass in his pocket. Sir, a call came from the submarine. Incoming vessels, multiple signatures. Drake turned sharply. They found us. Lieutenant Commander, a new voice rang out. Harsh, commanding. On the conning tower stood a man in an admiral's uniform. You are relieved of duty. Consider yourself under arrest for treason. That's not the real acting admiral. Drake muttered. That's Weiss. Jack made his decision in an instant. Get to the wheelhouse. he told Drake and Elaine. "I know these waters better than anyone." As they moved, gunfire erupted from the submarine, not aimed at them, but at the approaching patrol boats. The submarine crew was divided, some loyal to Drake, others to Weiss. Jack gunned the engine, sending his boat surging away from the submarine. Behind them, the water churned as the submarine began to submerge. "They can't catch us in the shallows," Jack called over the engine's roar, "and I've got something they need." He held up the waterproof case and the paper Nathan had written in the hospital. Together, they were proof of Nexus's plan and the corruption Jack had uncovered years before. "We need to reach the Coast Guard station," Drake shouted. "I have contacts there who can get this to the right people." As they raced through the dawn, patrol boats in pursuit, Jack felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the fierce clarity of doing what was right, regardless of consequence. The man he'd pulled from the river days ago was now helping him navigate a conspiracy that had claimed both their careers. Two broken soldiers, fighting one last mission. And this time, Jack wouldn't fail those who depended on him. 3 weeks later, Jack sat on his boat, watching the sunset paint the river in gold. The newspaper beside him carried the headline, "Defense Contractor CEOs Arrested in Military Espionage Case." Smaller text mentioned heroic naval officers, but kept names classified. Just as Jack preferred it. A familiar boat approached, Nathan Drake at the helm. He looked different in civilian clothes, more at ease, though the shadows behind his eyes remained. Some things never fully healed. "Permission to come aboard, Captain?" Drake called with a smile. "Granted, Commander." Drake stepped onto the deck, carrying a small cooler, brought some beer. "Figured we earned it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Osprey dive for fish in the fading light. "The inquiry cleared your name," Drake finally said. "Your service record has been amended. Full honors restored." Jack nodded. His vindication had come too late for the men who died, but perhaps their families would find some peace knowing the truth. "And you?" Jack asked. "Where does a whistleblower go from here?" "Consulting for now. They're rebuilding Clearwater the right way. They need people who know where the weak points are." Drake paused. "They could use someone with your experience too." Jack looked around at his simple boat, his simple life. "I'm done with service, Nathan. Done with secrets." "I understand. But if you ever change your mind." The offer hung in the air, neither accepted nor rejected. "Elaine says thanks, by the way," Drake added. "She's back at the Pentagon, making sure the right people stay in charge this time." As darkness settled over the river, Jack felt a weight lifting that he'd carried for 8 years. Not gone completely, some burdens never disappeared, but lighter now. "You know," Jack said, "when I pulled you from this river, I was just trying to save one life to make up for those I couldn't save before. Instead, you saved thousands. Every submarine with Clearwater installed would have been vulnerable." Jack shook his head. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Drake said firmly. "You did what few would have the courage to do. You reached into dark water and pulled out the truth." They touched bottles in silent toast as stars appeared above the ancient flowing river. That's the end of our story. What would you have done if you were Jack? Risk everything for the truth or stay safely in your quiet life? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Hit subscribe for more stories just like this. There's a new story waiting for you right now.